I pulled up to the house and parked along the curb, just behind a line of cars that looked like they hadn't moved all day. I sat there a moment, watching the string lights blink gently over the backyard, hearing faint laughter carried by the breeze. The wedding was already in full swing. I reached over to the passenger seat and picked up the gift I'd wrapped myself. Crisp corners, gold ribbon, handwritten card. You'd think after everything, I wouldn't have come. But here I was, again, showing up. Walking through the gate felt like stepping onto someone else's movie set. White canopies, polished silverware, couples swaying to soft jazz under the fading sun. Everyone seemed to glow. Or maybe it was just me, standing still in a dress I hadn't worn in years, trying to blend in with people I used to call family. I caught sight of my father, beaming like he'd just won the lottery, surrounded by aunts and cousins, a scotch in one hand. He didn't see me, or maybe he did and decided not to. My sister walked by without a word. My brother's new in-laws gave me the once-over and kept chatting. No one even asked who I came with. Maybe they already knew the answer. I almost didn't come. I had stood in my apartment that morning, dress in hand, keys in the other, asking myself what kind of person willingly walked into a room where she knew she wasn't wanted. But I showed up. I always do. The ceremony was over. People were milling around with champagne. I took a seat at a table near the edge, not quite banished, but definitely not front row. I watched as my brother laughed, cheeks red with joy, or wine, or both. He looked genuinely happy. Good for him. And then Dad stood up with a clink of his glass. "I just want to say," he started, voice thick with emotion, "how proud I am of my son. Today was perfect. He found someone who completes him, who makes him whole." Everyone applauded. He looked around at the crowd, misty-eyed. "I raised a good man," he said, nodding toward the groom. "A man who knows what love means, commitment, responsibility. Not everyone gets that right." He didn't say my name, not once, not in the general thank yous, not even in a passing joke. It was as if I had no part in the history that led us here. Then, as the clapping faded, he turned toward me. Just me. "Your brother's wedding was perfect," he said, raising his glass with a smirk. You'll be lonely forever." I felt everything in me stop. My breath, my thoughts, my spine straightened instinctively, like my body was trying to hold the blow. A cousin stifled a laugh. Someone across the table cleared their throat. One aunt looked away, pretending she hadn't heard. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. The silence said it all. I stared at my father, trying to read his face. Was it a joke? A jab? A test? No, it was a message. One he had waited years to deliver, and now that he had an audience, he made sure it landed. I remembered the nights I stayed up taking care of Mom while he traveled for work. The birthdays I spent alone because no one remembered. The scholarships I earned that never made it into dinner conversations. My brothers got claps on the back for showing up. I got silence, or reminders to smile more. My face burned, not from shame, but something sharper. I gripped the edge of the tablecloth beneath my hands. Breathe. Smile. Don't give them a scene. That moment wasn't just a slap. It was a verdict, one he'd been waiting to hand down. A cousin leaned over. "He didn't mean it like that," she whispered. "Didn't mean it like that?" As if the words rearranged themselves on the way out of his mouth. I didn't answer. She meant well. But in that moment, she became part of the wall. I looked over at my brother, still laughing with friends, his new wife by his side. He hadn't even flinched, no look of surprise, no defense, just another day where I took the bullet and everyone watched. I had co-signed the loan that let him buy his first car. I helped him study for the bar, drove him to interviews. I covered for him when he flaked on our mother's medical appointments. And here he was, letting it all slide past like I was nothing more than a distant guest. Then she stood, my new sister-in-law, and raised her glass. "To the women," she said, voice bright and polished, "who teach us what not to become." The room chuckled, a soft ripple of cruelty. I wasn't even angry at her. She didn't know the half of it, but she knew enough to aim the knife. I scanned the room. Not one face looked back with warmth. Not even recognition. I might as well have been invisible. But then something shifted. I stood. Slowly. Calmly. A hush settled. All eyes turned. They expected something. An apology. A tear. Maybe a meltdown. What they got was something else. I held my glass up. To knowing your worth, I said. Even when your family doesn't. I sipped. A murmur rolled through the crowd. A nervous chuckle here, a shifting chair there. My father's smile faltered for the first time all evening. I didn't wait for a reaction. I turned and walked out. Back straight, shoulders squared. Outside, the sky had started turning orange. That soft, golden kind of light that makes everything look like a memory. I stood at the edge of the yard, away from the canopies and curated perfection, and reached into my purse. My hand found the phone, and I dialed the number I hadn't touched in over a decade. I got back to my apartment just after dark. The street was quiet, and for a moment, the hush felt like a gift. But once I stepped inside, it turned to something heavier. The apartment was still in the state I'd left it. Clothes folded on the armrest, a few dishes stacked in the sink, the faint smell of perfume still hanging in the air from the morning I got dressed for the wedding. I kicked off my shoes and stood still in the middle of the living room. It was quiet. Too quiet. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that presses in on you. I could still hear Dad's words in my head, like someone had tattooed them on my brain. I walked toward the kitchen, reached for a wine glass, and stopped. I didn't need numbness. I needed clarity. My eyes landed on the far wall, the one where I used to hang family pictures. Birthdays, holidays, graduations. Most were gone now, packed away or tossed during moves. Only one remained, a picture of me and Elira at her science fair, a decade ago. She'd won second place. I was the only one there cheering. I whispered under my breath. At least one of them still saw me. The phone buzzed. I glanced at it. Elira. I hesitated. We hadn't had a real conversation in over a year. The occasional holiday text, maybe a like on social media. But this? A call? Now? I answered. Hey. Her voice was quiet. Aunt Marzelle, I saw what happened today. I leaned against the counter, the cool marble grounding me. Did you? I didn't know he'd say that, she said, voice shaking. I mean, I knew things were bad, but not like that. I didn't respond. I wasn't sure what she expected me to say. Comfort her? I found something, she went on. While helping with wedding stuff, there were these emails, planning emails between Mom and Tessa. Her voice dropped. Your name wasn't mentioned at all. I clenched my jaw. That wasn't new. But your ideas were the garden lighting, the menu, even the welcome board wording. Word for word what you suggested to Mom last year for her anniversary party. She paused like she was afraid of my silence. They copied it all and never mentioned you once, she added. I exhaled through my nose. Of course they did. I didn't know what to do. Mom told me not to say anything, said it'd create unnecessary tension. There it was. I stood upright, pacing slowly. So you stayed quiet. I was scared, she admitted, voice cracking. But I saw your face today, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. I should have told you sooner. 1,000 things ran through my mind. The rides I gave her to piano lessons. The time I drove 6 hours just to help her move into college. The nights she cried on my couch about her parents. And I told her she always had a home here. My sister didn't just erase me. She used her daughter to help do it. You know, I said quietly, I never asked you to choose sides. I know, she whispered. But I did, and I chose wrong. I wanted to forgive her. I really did. But some things stick deeper than others. Betrayal from people you protect. That cuts a different way. She kept talking, something about screenshots, but I had stopped listening. I didn't want this to happen to you, she said one last time, and then I ended the call. I sat down hard on the couch, staring at the photo on the wall. That little girl in the picture, 12 years old, with a trophy in hand and her arms around me, had once said, If they ever treat you unfairly, I'll speak up. I promise. Funny how promises age. Maybe she meant it back then. But people change, or maybe they don't. They just get quieter. I walked over, took the frame off the wall, and held it for a moment. Then I set it face down on the table. The clock ticked into the night. I didn't turn on the TV, didn't check social media. I sat at my desk, turned on the lamp, and opened my laptop. Old emails, party planning threads, drafts of speeches I had written for family events, photo folders labeled by year. I started a new system. One folder, ignored contributions. Another, stolen ideas. And one more, family gaslighting. I opened a blank document, typed a single sentence at the top. The story they buried. I didn't know what would come next, but I wasn't waiting anymore. Not for apologies, not for understanding, not for another invitation to another table that wasn't mine. This time, I was setting my own. The grocery store smelled like citrus and stale bread. I'd gone just for milk and eggs. I rounded the corner to the produce aisle and spotted Mrs. Ellerby pulling a cart, a woman whose smile always felt like she was trying to keep peace between storms. She lifted her hand in greeting. I forced a smile back. "It was such a beautiful wedding," she said, voice pitched just so. "Carl and Thalissa did wonderful." I nodded, unsure what to say. "And your speech at the rehearsal? It was very graceful." She paused, waiting for something from me. Only there was no speech. I never gave one. Her words stuck like thorns. I felt every buried insult, every overlooked effort tumble into view. I walked home with my heart heavy. The sky was turning gray. A soft wind ruffled fallen leaves. My apartment felt smaller than usual when I opened the door. I closed it behind me, stood still for a minute, letting silence be the loudest sound. Photos hung mostly where they'd always been, except some are gone. Memories edited out. I sank onto the couch, flipping through a single old family newsletter. Thanks to all who made the garden dinner perfect. My name, nowhere. But I remember planning that garden dinner. I remember choosing the flowers, arranging the tables, staying up painting welcome signs. I thought, they must have just forgotten. That's what I always told myself. But today, Mrs. Ellerby's words made me hear what I'd been denying. Not forgotten. Rewritten. At my desk later, under dim light, I opened folders of past designs, past emails. I found screenshots where I said, "This welcome board script should read." And when the wedding happened, the board read those exact words, attributed in the blog to Thalissa. My hand tightened around the mouse. I murmured to myself, they aren't just forgetting. I checked messages with Elira. When I asked if she remembers how things were, she said yes, but she also said, "I was afraid." Her voice trembled down the line, as if silence had become her shield. That night, I traced memories, school nothing, family gatherings, photos where I was in the background, smiling, arms folded, applause going to someone else. No pause, just erased. I wrote a sentence in my journal. If they can rewrite me out, I can write myself back in. It wasn't hope yet. It was refusal. Then came the email. Subject, family brunch. This Sunday, hope you'll come. No apology. Just an invite. It landed like an open car window in winter. It let in cold. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. I didn't reply. I shut down the laptop. I lay in bed, staring at ceiling cracks. Night passed fitfully. In that silence, I realized something had shifted. I wasn't just wounded, I was seeing the map of my own erasure. The sky was pale when I woke, sunshine leaking through slats of blinds. I smelled coffee brewing somewhere in the building. My neighbor, maybe. I sat at my studio table, sketchbook open, designs spread like fallen leaves. I flipped through my drafts, ribbon choices, bloom combinations, color swatches. Something in my inbox made my hand tremble. An email forwarded by the wedding planner saying, "Thalissa, the creative mind behind the bouquets." My stomach knotted. I opened my archive folder. My sketches matched the bouquet photos almost exactly. Not just flower choice, but ribbon style, leaf arrangement, the way the stems were tied. I remembered designing that bouquet 5 months earlier. I had sourced those blooms. I chose colors. I made layouts. And here it was, made public as someone else's creativity. Betrayal tasted like acid in my mouth. I drove to Thalyssa's PR office. Traffic crept along the boulevard. I practiced what I needed to say in my head. Measured. Calm. Not pleading, I stepped inside when receptionist buzzed me in. Thalissa greeted me with that polite smile, the kind that delays truth. I laid out my cards, the emails, the stamped approval from florist, my original sketches. She nodded, said mistakes happen, suggested perhaps creative collaboration. Her tone was soft but distant. I held my ground. Except I wasn't asked to collaborate, I wasn't credited. She tapped her pen, eyes narrowing slightly. Public perception matters, her assistant said from behind a counter, trying to shift the blame onto me. I left her office with the weight of what I'd uncovered pulling at my shoulders. In the car, I clutched my laptop bag like it was something alive. At home, I found the handmade gift I'd wrapped for Carl and Thalissa. Small wooden frame, hand-painted edge, a poem inside I wrote. During the thank you speech, it was attributed to family. That was enough then. I let it go. But tonight, I carried it out of storage. The card had my handwriting. I held it, saw how effort disappears under vague phrases. I texted Elira. "Do you remember the gift I made for you at your birthday last fall?" Her reply came slow. "Yes." There was a pause in my chest. I realized how many times I had swallowed being the nice one, the one who doesn't make a fuss. I turned on my small lamp. The glow was soft in the corner of the room. I cooked something simple. Ate in silence. The house felt heavy. I opened a TED Talk on my tablet. Don't let the world define your boundaries. I listened to a woman speaking of voice, of standing when the world expects you to bow. I opened my journal and wrote the pattern. Erasure. Credit theft. Silence. I paused. Fear came. Fear of backlash. Fear my father would never see me differently. Fear I'd be labeled dramatic. I thought of privacy, of relationships I might lose. Yet something in me pulled hard toward fairness. I drafted an email in my drafts folder. Please update credits for the bouquet design and thank yous to reflect original creators. I hovered over send. My fingers trembled. Outside, the air rumbled, distant thunder. As rain started, I glanced at my phone. The email was sent. I watched the read receipt flicker. My heart hammered, because this time, I wasn't asking. I was asking them to admit. Brunch sunlight bounced against the windows when I walked in. Carl's house smelled like fresh pancakes and tension. Deep blue dress, hair tucked behind one ear. I nodded to greetings that floated by, the kind you give when you mean nothing. My stomach tightened as others sipped juice, leaned in to laugh, but avoided looking me in the eyes. Carl shook my hand, voice casual. "Good to see you." I forced a smile, measured, calm. Thalissa hovered nearby, laughter soft, compliments on my dress. A niece asked if I missed out on post-wedding cleanup. Not one reference to my email, not one acknowledgement. My heart thudded, not from surprise, from exhaustion. Walking into the living room felt like stepping into a stage play I knew all the lines to but never got credit for writing. Everyone wanted normal. I wanted truth. Silence hung between bites. Plates passed. A cousin handed me coffee. I took it. Warm mug in hand. I tasted bitterness under cream. I pulled Carl aside, small space near the hallway. "Did you get my email?" My voice calm, but I could feel the tremor. He swallowed. "We thought you'd moved on from all that." He avoided my eyes. My voice steadied. "You mean being erased?" He paused. Thalissa joined, leaning on the doorframe, polished voice. "It's not about erasure, it's about timing." Timing. As if I asked for wrong time. She smiles too smooth. Everything around me seems to slow. Words soft, but their edges sharp. Compliments, words disguised as kindness, withholding. "Perhaps you overthink it," someone murmured under breath. Minimizations everywhere, like sand in a wound. I couldn't remain quiet. I stepped outside, sun on my face. Found Dad alone on the patio. He looked like someone waiting for me to behave. I asked why he stood up and said Dad's lines so loud for Carl, then looked at me and said I'd be lonely forever. He shifted. "It was a joke, sweetheart. Was it ever a punchline with room for me?" I said, It was a verdict. He frowned. You're too touchy. You misinterpret. His words soft spoiled. Then it came. You chose to stay outside the family. I looked at him. No, you just stopped opening the door. Silence again, heavier than shame. Back inside, Thalissa raised a glass to family unity. Faces lifted, eyes on me. I stood, glass in hand. To the family's memory, selective, sanitized, and silent. My words cut, the room still. Carl stammered, "Don't do this." I placed my glass down. It's already done. That night, I sat at my computer, sketched the bouquet side by side with my design, uploaded the picture. Caption, "Sometimes silence is the loudest theft." I watched as likes and comments trickled in. Some said beautiful work, others said finally speaking up. Elira texted, "You're not alone." My pulse steadied. I closed the laptop. The morning sun hit my face through the blinds in sharp gold lines. My heart was still heavy from brunch and the conversations that weren't had. I pulled back the curtains, staring out at the quiet street. I felt the same whispers, the same weight of being overlooked. I reached for my phone, drawer of regrets maybe, but the screen lit with a wedding blog post headline, "Top flower designers who made the day special." Thalissa's name was huge in the subheading. Mine wasn't there. My breath caught. I sat at my desk, sketchbook open. My pen hovered above paper. I flipped through my designs, layouts, ribbon color palettes, bloom choices, everything I imagined, everything I directed, the faint echo of memories, picking rare flowers in spring, staying past closing hours at the florist's workshop, arranging sample bouquets until my fingers ached. And now, someone else's name took credit. Someone else's name. Invisibility has a taste. Metallic, bitter. I gathered what I needed quietly. Design files, timestamps, email threads confirming approvals. I compared every photo I'd taken of that bouquet, side by side with the public shots. Ribbon curl, stem angle, petal placement. Even the ribbon trailing at the base had my signature curve, my name in drafts, my handwriting on sketches, and then the gift. The handmade frame with handwritten poem. The card with my signature, bought into a display where family gift was the line used in the speech. It was always from family, never from me. Phone in hand, I called Elira. "Did you see the blog post?" I asked. She hesitated. Visibly, I could hear her weighing words. "Saw it," she said. "But I thought, maybe they'll fix it." Fix it, as if giving someone else credit was a fixable mistake. The pull to stay quiet battled with the urge to expose every lie. So I did. I posted a side-by-side photo, my sketch beside the actual bouquet. Caption, "Original designs deserve original credit." I didn't call names, I didn't plead, I simply showed the truth. Comments appeared, supportive voices, neutral nods, and some siding with voices loyal to Thalissa. A friend messaged, "She always built everything off your ideas." But there were others. "Are you sure it was exactly yours? Maybe collaboration?" Defensive words wrapped in doubt, like a shield. At home, the tension pressed into every corner. My father called, saying, "Calm down, don't stir the pot." Thalissa's PR account posted something too. "No one is erasing your work, it's all perception." I read it on my phone, heart thudding. Comments accused me of being dramatic, playing victim. The same sacrifices I made, hours late, weekends spent, care given when others walked away, suddenly sounded like excuses. The irony, they wanted me quiet. Quiet never protected me. It buried me. Late that night, when the house was quiet, I found it. An old contract from the florist, my handwriting, the date stamped months before the wedding, notes in margins, approval signatures, clear directives. I held it, my chest tight. This wasn't just internet chatter anymore. This was undeniable. My fingers hovered over the phone screen. Family, reputation, my own name, the risk. But the truth begged for voice. I knew what I had to do. I pressed send. Elira's message came when the sun hung low, casting long shadows in my home office. I paused mid-sketch, phone trembling in my hand. "I have more." She sent photos, old drafts I'd forgotten, emails I thought lost. There was one picture of me at the design firm, sleeves rolled up, hands deep in glue and ribbon, email approvals from the florist stamped months before the wedding. My breath caught. I called her. Her voice was small, burdened. She told me how she was pressured, told not to stir things up. How Mom said it would cause more harm than good. I listened, the guilt in her voice echoing things I already felt. For once, I wasn't alone. It shifted something inside me. The weight I carried alone loosened. That afternoon, I showed up at the local community center. There were tables of art, floral displays, people milling about. Thalyssa's piece was on display, the same arrangement from the wedding, with no credit. And there, side by side, was my original draft photo. Same petals, same curves, same ribbon droop. The judge praised Thalissa first. I cleared my throat. That photo, that arrangement, reflects what I sent the florist months ago. My voice felt loud. I laid out the draft, then the final arrangement, then the email. Several heads turned. Thalyssa's face didn't look polished now. It looked caught. The judge frowned. Folks whispered. A woman leaned forward. I always thought there was something shared. Dad approached, pulling me aside. He said, "This isn't how we do family." Thalissa offered what she called an apology. If there was misunderstanding, I regret. But it rang flat. Misunderstanding is erasure in fancy clothes, I said. Words I didn't plan, but which felt necessary. The crowd pressed. Some nodded with empathy, others avoided my eyes. I remembered that name tag I never had at the wedding. I remembered the silence in family photos and the claps that were never meant for me, but now I stood in my own name. Late evening, Elira called again. She said a local radio producer heard about the exhibit and wanted to talk. Interview. Not staged. Real. My chest stung. Opportunity and risk all bundled up. I practiced words in the mirror, the reflection steady. I would speak, not for revenge, but so I could be seen. The community hall buzzed with low conversation. Rows of folding chairs, streamers someone had taped too low, and a tray of lukewarm lemonade greeted me when I walked in. On the surface, it looked like just another small-town gathering. But I knew better. This wasn't a celebration. It was a stage. I stood near the back for a moment, scanning the faces. Neighbors, old classmates, some church friends, a few local reporters pretending they weren't there for a story. Then I saw the mic. I didn't wait for a cue. I walked forward and asked to speak. They gave me the floor, probably expecting a thank you or a sweet anecdote. Instead, I talked about the wedding, about the floral design, the gift, the erasure. I spoke plainly, my voice even, not theatrical. I didn't attack, I just laid it out. And then, I pulled out the final check, the original payment slip, my name, the date, the florist's signature, silence, shifts in seats, a few people whispering. Then came the voice I didn't expect, my mother's. She stepped up beside me, but not close. Her voice was shaky but clear. You should know when you don't belong. That was it. No explanation, no softening, just that. The room froze. She didn't say it in anger. That's what made it worse. She said it like it was fact, like gravity, like it was something I should have known all along. I didn't cry. I didn't storm out. I stood there, let her words hang like smoke in the air, the kind of smoke that stings but clears your head. I nodded once, slowly, then walked off the stage. By the next morning, the story had legs. A journalist I'd sent the documents to ran a piece. Photos, emails, side-by-sides of my sketches and the final arrangements. Headlines used words like misattribution, family conflict, creative theft. Carl's name was in the article. So was Thalyssa's. By noon, Carl's firm had lost a major client. The scandal was too public, too messy. Damage control was a losing game. Thalyssa's PR issued a bland statement, something about shared inspiration and miscommunication. But people weren't buying it. I watched the fallout from my studio, the comments pouring in. Some praising, some attacking, some just curious. Dad didn't say much, but I noticed how quiet the family group texts had gotten. No more links to articles about Carl's projects, no more proud of our family messages, just silence. Or worse, private whisperings I wasn't part of. I sat at my workbench, phone in hand. Notifications lit up one after another. Thank you for standing up. I've been through the same. You're brave. But behind the screen, my hands were cold. Because with every share, every cheer, every repost, something else was unraveling. Something permanent. The trust, gone. The illusion, shattered. But my name, they were finally saying it. I wasn't the forgotten sister anymore. I wasn't the extra guest. I wasn't the silent contributor. I was visible, and that mattered. Later that night, as I curled up on the couch, the phone rang. Unknown number. I answered anyway. It was Dad. His voice wasn't angry, just tired, unsure. I heard your story on the radio, he said. Pause. Then, you were right. That's all. No, I'm sorry. No explanation. Just those words. And somehow, they hit harder than I thought they would. I stared at the ceiling after the call ended, wondering what came next, whether I would take that as peace or demand something more than just words. Dad's voice still played in my mind, days after the call ended. You were right. It didn't echo like triumph. It hung there, unfinished. He hadn't said sorry. He hadn't asked for forgiveness, just that. For a while, I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't call him back. I didn't tell anyone I was even considering it. Friends suggested I leave it alone. Don't stir what you've already survived, one of them said. My therapist had other thoughts. Closure doesn't mean locking the door. Sometimes it means opening a window and letting the air change. So I sat with it, let it settle, let it itch. Then I typed out a text. Deleted. Typed again. Deleted. Finally, I wrote one line and hit send. Meet me by the lake, Sunday, 9 a.m. No signature. That morning was cool and quiet. Early autumn. I brought a flask of coffee, same brand he always kept in the truck console growing up. I didn't know if he'd come. But when I saw him walking down the path, hands in pockets, shoulders slightly slouched, coat swallowing his frame, I felt something shift. Not forgiveness, just recognition. Time had touched him too. He sat down beside me. No hug, no "how are you?" Just the lake in front of us and space between. I didn't know how to start this, he said after a long silence. You just did, I said, staring straight ahead. Then came his question. Quiet, almost shy. Did it always feel like I chose him? I didn't look at him. I didn't nod. I didn't cry. I just said what I'd never been able to. You didn't have to choose anyone. You just had to listen. He was quiet again. Then he exhaled, like the weight had finally hit him. I'm sorry I raised you to please everyone but yourself. I sat with that. Those words didn't fix anything. But they were real. They came from a place I hadn't seen in him before. We talked. Not about everything, but about enough. He told me he thought he was protecting me all those years, by keeping peace, by telling me to let things go. He said silence felt safer than confrontation. I told him silence is where I learned to disappear. He told me a story I'd never heard, about his mother, my grandmother, who once left home for a whole year after being dismissed by her own family, came back with a job, a car, a backbone. Guess you've got her blood, he said. I asked him if he regretted anything. He looked out over the water and said, yeah, more than you know. Then, but I'm proud of what you've become. We didn't hug when we parted. He just touched my shoulder lightly and walked back the way he came. On the walk home, I didn't feel lighter. I felt clearer, like I had finally put something down I didn't realize I'd been carrying. I wrote one last post on my blog that night. I titled it, You Are Not Unlovable for Speaking Your Truth. The response was overwhelming. It wasn't just younger women. It was women in their 60s, 70s, some even older. I kept silent for 50 years, one wrote. I wish I had your courage. Another wrote, Thank you for saying what I never could. Carl sent me a message, just one word. Congratulations. No apology, no explanation. A truce, maybe. I didn't reply. A week later, I opened the door to my new studio. Small, simple, but mine. I named it One Name Only. No initials, no shared credits, just my name on the door. That was enough. I was rearranging some vases near the window when I saw a little girl outside with her mom. The girl was holding a bouquet. Messy, bright, uneven, but full of joy. She held it up. Look, Mom, I picked these all myself. Her mom knelt, smiled. That's beautiful. Did you really? The girl nodded like it was the most important thing in the world. I smiled quietly and turned back inside. That's the childhood I'm building now, in whatever small ways I can. For myself, for others, not loud. And not flashy, but honest. I don't need their loud apologies anymore. I don't need the spotlight. I don't even need them to understand. I just need room to grow. And here's what I know now. You can be part of a family and still choose yourself.